The day they walked me out of the lab with a cardboard box of my life's work, my father's voice crackled over the phone. "You've finally proven us right. You're nothing but a troublemaker." I stared at the sealed envelope in my hand, my termination notice, while the hallway lights flickered overhead, each buzz a reminder that the colleagues who had copied my data altered my reports, and whispered that I was too idealistic for real science, had won this round. The shame burned hotter than any summer sun, and I knew I could not stay in the city that had just erased me. I packed a single suitcase, left the apartment that smelled of coffee and disappointment, and drove toward the outskirts where the old rail yards lay abandoned, choked with weeds and litter. My family had never understood why I chose botany over a respectable profession. At dinner, my mother would push her plate away and say, "Plants don't pay bills, sweetheart. You'll end up living in a tent." My brother laughed, calling my field sketches childish doodles, and my aunt would whisper to cousins, "She's embarrassing us, talking to dirt like it's a friend." Their ridicule wasn't just teasing. It was a constant refrain that I was chasing a ridiculous dream, while they pursued stable, sensible lives. That night, perched on a rusted beam overlooking the vacant lot, I pulled out a notebook filled with the research that had been stolen from me. Studies on native pollinator corridors, soil remediation using urban compost, and a vision for turning concrete veins into living arteries. I whispered to myself, if they won't see the value, I'll make them see it in the flesh. I began foraging, not for food but for knowledge. I collected seeds from cracks in sidewalks, cuttings from neglected park shrubs, and spores from damp alley walls. I learned which species could thrive in compacted soil, which could break down pollutants, and how to stitch together micro-habitats that would attract birds, bees, and even small mammals. The first attempts were met with scorn. City officials issued warnings for illegal plantings, and local news ran a segment titled "Urban Forager" or "Menace," with a headline that read, "Botanist turns trespasser. Is she threatening public safety?" My family watched the clip, my father shaking his head. "See, I told you you'd end up in handcuffs." I felt the sting, but each fine, each warning, each whispered jab only sharpened my resolve. I started small, a narrow strip beside a broken bus stop, where I planted hardy lavender and yarrow. Within weeks, butterflies returned, and the scent drifted onto the street, making passers-by pause. Word spread slowly, then faster. A community garden organizer noticed the transformation and invited me to speak at a neighborhood meeting. I stood before a crowd of skeptical residents, my hands trembling, and spoke about soil health, water retention, and the quiet power of native plants. I showed before and after photos. Gray concrete turned into a mosaic of green, buzzing with life. The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. That night, I received an email from a municipal sustainability office. "We'd like to pilot your model on 3 vacant lots." The work was grueling. I woke before dawn to haul compost, spent afternoons negotiating with skeptical contractors, and faced setbacks when a sudden frost killed a fledgling plot or when vandals uprooted seedlings. Yet each obstacle taught me resilience. I learned to listen to the land, to adapt my designs to the microclimates of each block, and to engage residents as co-stewards rather than passive spectators. My projects began to earn recognition: a grant from an environmental foundation, a feature in a national magazine, and an invitation to present at an urban ecology summit. Years later, standing on a platform overlooking the redeveloped riverfront, a sprawling ribbon of wetlands, meadows, and walking trails I had helped design, I felt a quiet triumph. The once neglected lots were now thriving ecosystems, their biodiversity measured in rising pollinator counts and cleaner water samples. I had turned the ridicule of my early days into a legacy that cities across the country were beginning to emulate. I decided it was time to go home. The drive back to my hometown was a mix of anticipation and dread. I pulled up to the modest house where I had grown up, the same porch swing creaking in the evening breeze. My mother was in the kitchen, peeling apples. My father was reading the newspaper. My brother was tinkering with his car in the driveway. I knocked, and the door opened to a chorus of surprised faces. "You look different," my mother said, studying my field-stained jacket and the badge pinned to my lapel that read Lead Ecologist, Riverfront Revival Project. I smiled, gesturing toward the street. "Come see what I've been working on." We walked 3 blocks to the site where, a decade ago, a rusted factory lot had been an eyesore. Now native grasses swayed in the wind, wildflowers painted the ground in purples and golds, and a small pond shimmered, edged with reeds that filtered runoff. Dragonflies darted above the water, and a family of ducks paddled lazily near the shore. A group of children from the neighborhood were planting seedlings under the guidance of a volunteer, their laughter mixing with the rustle of leaves. My father stepped forward, his eyes softening as he touched a blade of bluestem. I didn't think it could look like this," he admitted, his voice low. My mother's hands trembled as she brushed a petal of a coneflower. "All those times we said you were wasting your life, I'm sorry." My brother, usually quick with a joke, stood silent, his gaze fixed on a bee hovering over a lavender stalk. "You actually made something beautiful," he whispered. The ant who had once whispered about embarrassment approached, eyes glistening. "I thought you were chasing a fantasy. You turned fantasy into reality." I felt the weight of their apologies settle like warm soil around my roots. I turned to them and said, "The land never cared about our doubts. It only responded to the care we gave it. When I was told I'd fail, I chose to listen to the earth instead." We spent the rest of the evening walking the trails, sharing stories of the plants that had survived frost, flood, and neglect. My father pulled out an old photograph of me as a child, knees muddy, holding a wilting seedling. "You always had this," he said, pressing the picture into my hand. "We just couldn't see it." That night, as I lay on the guest bed, the city's distant hum a lullaby, I reflected on the journey. The sabotage that had tried to erase my work had instead pushed me toward a path where my passion could flourish openly. The ridicule that once stung like thorns had become the compost that nourished my resolve. I realized that true vindication isn't found in proving others wrong. It's found in growing so fully that the world can't help but notice. The barren lots I'd transformed were more than ecosystems. They were living testaments to the power of perseverance, the importance of listening to nature's quiet wisdom, and the unexpected grace that arrives when we stop seeking approval and start tending to what truly matters. And as I drifted to sleep, the soft chorus of crickets outside my window reminded me that every ending is merely a seed waiting for the right season to bloom. I was finally home, not just to a place, but to the certainty that my dream, once deemed ridiculous, had taken root and was now bearing fruit for all to see.